everybody. Welcome to another episode of Hawk Blogger Morning. I am Brian Nemhauser, and it's actually Hawk Blogger Mornings. It's not singular, it's plural. I can't even get the name of my own show correct, but that's okay. It is Sunday, and it is not the morning here, but it is the morning for Rob Staton, and that's why it still counts. Rob Staton joining us just as the day turns over there on the other side of the water. We've got a Seahawks draft roundtable, one of the episodes that kind of kicked off all this last year. People loved it when we brought in Rob Staton of Seahawks Draft blog and Griff Sturgeon of Seattle Overload podcast. Two guys with different perspectives, different areas of expertise, but the same passion for the Seahawks, and both excellent people as well. So, Rob, I think we were just commiserating before. I think we're both a little sick. How you feeling, my friend?
Yeah, whenever I go on a plane these days, and you were saying the same thing, I always come off feeling rough. And it happened when I went to Germany twice last summer. It happened when I went to Vancouver, and now it's the same with Sweden. And I don't get really, really sick. I can kind of fight through it, but just under the weather. So, thankfully the weather's quite warm in England, so that's helping a little bit, but feeling a bit rough.
Yeah, well, sorry to hear that. Yeah, I'm trying a different method this time. I'm trying to just completely destroy it with NyQuil and Airborne and ignoring it completely. And it worked for a couple days. It's catching up to me today. So we'll see how that goes. But Griff Sturgeon, how are you doing? You seem like you're fully healthy.
Yeah, well, I'm doing fine, but I got a little survivor's guilt sitting here in good health. So, I hope you guys are able to not weighed down by it too much.
Oh, I think we're gonna be fine. Well, it's funny you say survivor's guilt. I was thinking about the relative experiences of the three of us who have lead a pretty social media relevant life. And I don't know that any of us are the most predictable folks that would be on social media as much as we are. And I'm not going to re-legislate this because we'll talk about that another time, but I've got Rob, who I know is probably pretty excited about the moves that the Seahawks have made and moving on from Geno. Got Griff, who really was not excited about those moves. And I'm pretty much neutral on the moves. I see both sides. And the reason I bring this up is I'm guessing you guys have been getting it from the sides on social media that do not agree with you about your perspective. And I'm curious, Rob, you especially, you engage, and Griff, you too, but I'll come to you next. Rob, you engage with folks. I just as soon as there starts to be that stuff, for most of the time, I just disengage. So tell me about your social media strategy. What's your mindset when you're getting into these conversations?
Well, I think that's part of the problem. I don't have a strategy, and unfortunately, I'm often not to get involved in a conversation on Twitter, and I just can't resist. It's just the one thing. I don't know what it is. It's a real weakness on my behalf. But if someone goes to the trouble of saying something to me, I can't just ignore that. Especially, and people know how to sort of provoke me into responding with their language, and then it goes down into a long conversation. So. And it's not just with this; it's with my day job as well. I cannot resist having a debate, and it's partly a flaw, partly it's just a real interest in the things I'm talking about. I'm very lucky that my day job is essentially talking about soccer all day, and then my sort of evening thing is Seahawks. So when people talk to me about that, I kind of want to talk about it as well. So I can't resist. It's the thing that is probably wastes more time than it should in my life, but I just cannot resist a debate about sport.
You know what would be hilarious is if at home with your wife you were like, "Yes, dear. Yes, dear." You did. You never argued at all.
Do you know what? I wish that was she was stood here now. She'd be saying that is not bloody true because if she says something that I disagree with, it ends up being a bit like Twitter, but she gives as good as she gets. My thing with my wife is she will never, ever back down. We could have a debate about something and she could assert an opinion on, for example, who the Seahawks should take at 18, having done no research. and an hour later she'll still be convinced that she's correct. So that's our relationship. I wouldn't have it any other way.
There is somebody for everybody in the world, Griff. How about you? I mean, you are one of the most, kind-hearted, sarcastic. You do kind of tweak some people, but like, you come across as a pretty, even-keeled guy, and yet you trigger a lot of responses, sometimes from me. So, like, how do you kind of approach your social media experience?
Well, I will say, like, I engage a lot, and I realize the more I engage, the more you invite it. People know you'll go back and forth with them. I am sincerely interested in what people's line of thought is, because even if because you get so much, ardent opinions that people hold to really dearly, right, online of all sorts of things. And so my mind is, okay, well, if they're spending this much time, asserting their opinion, they must have, like, what are their trains of thought? What's their logic? And that I've found that when I engage with them, I end up understanding my own position more qualitatively than I did before. And so some of the most comprehensive conversations I've had, like even with my guy Maddie, like Maddie and I, our friendship started with an argument, not an argument, but a back and forth where we were on opposite sides about something. And it makes you question your own position. So I'm also not afraid to, like, state my opinion. And I've over the years, I've kind of muted the intensity of, like, what I think, because I just, it gets to the point where people think, you're subtweeting them, or like a whole group of people. And it's like, this is just, and you can get an avalanche of response. And it's like, it kind of turns into every comment becomes a culture war.
Yes.
With regard to the Seahawks. And it's like, sometimes there isn't an ulterior motive. I just think this guy can zone drop. Like, it's really that simple. It's like, there's nothing else going on there. That doesn't mean or if you make a minor comment, like, I think this guy's better than that guy, that doesn't mean I think that guy's bad. I might think he's an 8 out of 10. I just think this other guy's a 9 out of 10. And so things get, I think everyone online, especially recent years, are on edge. And things get perceived that maybe aren't there. Sometimes it is there, and it's hard to tell. But all in all, I think for the most part, depending on how selective you are, there is some quality conversation that goes on, and that is what I'm looking for. If I have a wide audience as well. Like, I have a lot of people that are into football that are not Seahawks fans, and so engagement with them. Sometimes I disagree. Sometimes they disagree with me. Has helped me understand football better, and helped me understand my own opinions better as well. So I just, whatever comes of it, really.
Yeah, wise words. Makes sense. And honestly, I mean, that's what initially brought, I think, a lot of us to Twitter, was this opportunity to have a conversation about something we were kind of obsessed about that was unnaturally an unnatural obsession, and a way to kind of have a conversation with people you've never met about a topic you care about. And there were days where it was I think a lot more, what's the right word? Wholesome, I guess, or less tribal. But it's still, I mean, it's still a place, the only place I think you can really go to have those kind of conversations and meet people with different types of expertise. So certainly been a way that I've met both of you. And with that, before we get started with the show, we are going to be talking today, if you didn't already know, if you're just tuning in, we are going to each one of us are going to give you 5 players, the names of 5 players. They might overlap. We have not discussed this. We don't know who the names are. 5 players in the 2025 draft that we believe can take the Seahawks from a good team to a great team. And yes, I'm making the baseline that the Seahawks are a good team. So I'm not going to leave that up for debate. The only kind of guidance I gave to Griff and to Rob ahead of time was, let's try to have at least one of the 5 names be a day 2 guy, and at least one of the names be a day 3 guy. So that's it. They could have 3 first rounders, 1 third rounder, and 1 6th rounder. It doesn't matter, as long as they have at least one from each day of the draft. And we're going to go day by day, and we're each going to reveal our day 1 guys, day 2. And again, imperfect. We may have different expectations about where guys are going to go. not going to be super, super crazy about, strict about it. Before we get into it, make sure, one, you give this show a like, you click subscribe. Two, you go over to the Seattle Overload podcast where Griff and Maddie do great work. You give that show a like and subscribe. And then you go to Rob Staton's Seahawks Draft blog, read the stuff there, and also go on to YouTube and give that a subscribe as well. So, with that said, are you guys ready to reveal your game-changing players?
Ready, sir.
You're ready. Okay. Griff, we're going to start with you. And before I ask you for the names, I want to ask you for how you decided on the names. What was it like? What was your thought process? What was your criteria?
Yeah, I tried to distribute it kind of evenly across position groups of relative need. So I started in that direction. Then I thought about like, what are the cliffs? What are the value picks? So like, yeah, you might like this guy more, but would you rather take the next guy in the second round or this guy in the first round type of thing? So try to balance all of that. And I kind of settled on the combination of value, need, and like, quote unquote, my guy. So that was kind of the general thing. And I had a lot of mixing around. I was cutting names off, adding names in. I was like, do I want this guy? Et cetera, blah, blah, blah. So you just want me to crank them out, the top five?
No, I do not want you to
okay.
just crank them out. I want you to tell me the first day one player. How many day one players do you have?
Well, that depends. It depends on how you view
your expectation of day one.
All right. So I've got one legitimate day one, no questions asked. And then I've got one guy that is fringe.
Okay. Rob, how many day one guys do you have?
Well, I have, obviously, I've already explained I have cheated and I've got more than 5. So I'm gonna if either of you two mention any of the players I mentioned, I'm not gonna go to them. But I've got 1, 2, 3 players I think are day one, 2 that I think are day 3 that I think are day 2, and then 2 that I think are day 3.
Okay, I've got 2 guys that I'm going to say are day one. So let's do one name at a time, and we're going to go round robin. So Griff, give me your first name. This is a day one player, your first player that you think could change the Seahawks from good to great, and explain why.
Colston Loveland, tight end, Michigan. He's the first guy. So I think my number one tight end, and the gap between the two has closed, but then my number one tight end is Tyler Warren. I have this hunch that Warren, well, I think most people do, will be gone before 18. So I don't think and you wanted to be realistic, right? So I don't think he's going to be there. So that left me with Colston Loveland. If he's there at 18 and that's their pick, I would be okay with that. One, it starts with the Seahawks are going to be a 2 tight end team. They're going to be a heavy personnel team. So they need pass catchers. Obviously, DK Metcalf left. Cooper Kupp can hold it down for a while. But beyond that, the long-term picture is pretty bare. It's just Jackson Smith and Jigba in this moment. I like A.J. Barner as a young guy, but I don't want to put any pressure on him. I just want him to kind of develop at his own pace. So naturally, it left me toward Colston Loveland, the best combination of getting a guy that can soak up a lot of targets and efficiently, and very easy scheme fit. And then also scheme fit in the sense that they're a 12 personnel team. But then, so he has a thing where he's not considered to be a great blocker. At his frame and height and weight, though, he can certainly grow into that. But for the same reasons, he's not considered a great blocker because he's more the flex type, the versatile type. I think he helps them. He helps them tie all their formations together. He lets your 12 personnel function like 11. He can also let if he's the guy in 11, it can, along with Cooper Kupp, it can kind of function like 12. But he also protects both JSN and Cooper Kupp a little bit because he can be flexed around. You can put him on the line of scrimmage to the side that to the Z receiver is. And that means that Z receiver can be off the line of scrimmage. Also in 11, same thing goes. And so there's that kind of question of, well, what do we do when we've got Cooper Kupp and JSN on the field together at the same time? One of the stock answers for alleviating those kind of formational conundrums is having its tight end like that, Colston Loveland. Now, Loveland himself, he's an incredible receiver. In fact, just pure receiving, I think he has Tyler Warren beat. That said, Warren has room to grow himself. He's not. This isn't just a floor ceiling dichotomy between the two. Like Warren also has an incredible ceiling. I think Loveland is a guy that will just continue to get better and better, though. He can win at the line of scrimmage. His separation ability at the top of the route, first, second, and frankly, third level is great. He eats up yards in the seam. Sam Darnold is fearless throwing over the middle, sometimes too fearless. But I think Loveland would take a lot of pressure off of Darnold, and I can't imagine. Kubiak, he become Kubiak's favorite player. So also this assumes I don't think Noah Fant is long for this world as a Seahawk anymore. So that's the other part of it. And he's kind of a mirror to Fant in a style sense as well.
Yeah, interesting. And mentioned this yesterday. I was on with Jeff. Nate Tice, I'm sure you've seen it, did a great article comparing Warren and Loveland. And he was pretty convincing that Loveland is actually, he came to the conclusion he was a better blocker than Warren. And had some evidence to back that up, which was eye-opening for me, challenged some of my assumptions, getting back to what we were talking about earlier, that helps to read and listen to people that think differently than you do. So Colton Loveland, the tight end for Michigan, is the first name on the board. Rob, we're coming to you next, and you are the first thing I'm going to ask you again, just like Griff, is how did you come up with these names? What was your process?
Well, I don't think this is a draft where you can I'm just being honest. I don't think this is a draft where you can realistically expect to move the team from good to great. I think if the Seahawks had the 5th overall pick, you'd be struggling to think of a player who can do that. I think this is a draft where you look for starters. I think this is a draft class that has got some depth, but is weak in terms of the special players, that are going to elevate you to the next level. So my expectation isn't, sorry, this is kind of spoiling the exercise a little bit, but it's not really that they're going to be able to find these players to take them to the next level. So I've just tried to think of the players who I think will give them the best chance of that in a range where they're likely to be available for the Seahawks. So I'm not picking Abdul Carter.
So who is your first name?
So the first player that I've gone with is Malachi Starks. I think that his ability to play from deep is rare. I don't think there are many players who can do what he can do in that regard. He has excellent read and react skills, the profile to get the football or to get to the ball carrier very quickly from a deep position. Not many players, again, can do that. I think his ability to go and high point the football is insane. And he showed that both on tape and at the combine. I think his combine workout was severely underrated. It might have helped that none of the other better safeties worked out, and he just looked so much better than everybody else. But it was evident to me that he looked that way. He's very intelligent, and you can see that in the way that he plays. I think he could be an X factor at safety. I don't think he's the most versatile guy. He often gets sort of pitched as that. I think he is best as a deep safety. And I just think there are very few players who can do what he does. I think he has got that ability to potentially be an eraser. So on top of that, he's got elite character and mental makeup. So you don't have to worry about that side of it. He's going to give absolutely everything to be great. And I don't know if a great safety will necessarily turn Seattle into an amazing team. But they had a great safety when they were an amazing team last time. So I've gone with Malachi Starks.
Makes sense. And so that makes it my turn to give my first name. And my process, it was kind of a few different things. One was there's just guys that I've laid eyes on, and I came away with such a strong impression that I couldn't shake it. Like, it was just, it left me with a perspective that even after all the reviews of all the different conversations and all the different, interviews and stuff, a few guys just jumped to the top for me. And then it was a matter of winnowing it down. And so I also looked at positions and which positions I think can make the biggest impact. And then it also was relative to the depth chart and where their Seahawks are already strong. Adding another, even if it was a great player, I didn't necessarily think that was going to make them that much better, depending on the position. So that was kind of my winnowing process. And so my first name is a little surprising. It's interesting that all three of us, our first names are not linemen, offensive linemen. My first name is a guy that I saw in Mobile and I had watched a little bit of, but he moved differently than everybody on that field. He made all the offensive linemen look a little bit silly. He just had speed, burst, and the idea that he was the best player among the best players was hard for me to ignore, even though his production is absolute shit. And Greg Cosell told me this guy has no pass rush plan whatsoever. His name's Shamar Stewart. And as far as the type of player that could take the Seahawks from good to great, Shamar Stewart's a risk. There's no doubt about it. But if he turns into the edge rusher that his talent allows, I'm not sure there's a player that could help the Seahawks more than to add an edge rusher that is a true alpha. I think he's got that potential. I don't think it's certain he'll reach it, but he's the guy, the first guy on my list that came to mind when I did this. Kind of surprised me, to be honest. I thought I'd go offensive line, but that was not the first name. All right. So we've got Malachi Starks, Colston Loveland, and Shamar Stewart. And by the way, you don't have to take guys off the board if you also have them. Rob's going to do that. That's fine. You don't have to do that. Doubling up is not a bad thing. So does anyone? I have another day one. Does anyone else have another day one?
I have two.
I think you both do. Okay. So Rob, I'm gonna go back to you, and then we're gonna come to you after that, Griff. Who is your second player, Rob?
Well, the second player is not a player that I think most people will assume would be a day one, but I think he is, and that is Elijah Arroyo. I think he's an ideal fit for the offense. I think his body control, his hands, his ability to gain position, to box out. I think he really stood out at the Senior Bowl more than most players. I think he can develop into a plus blocker. You sort of see shades of that where he can do it, and I think his sort of personality and the application that he plays with will mean that he can develop in that sense. He just sells the run very, very well to create opportunities. I just think he's so dynamic. You can line him up in so many different positions and attack a defense with him. I think he's a shade below the top two who in this class are going to go very, very early. I think both of them will. But I think there's sort of a little bit of separation between them and Arroyo, and then a little bit of separation between Arroyo and Mason Taylor. I just think he might end up going earlier than people think. I don't think the Seahawks will take him at 18, but I honestly wouldn't be that surprised if they moved down a little bit and then took him. I think there are going to be teams in probably from 25 to 32 who consider taking this guy in the first round. And I think the one thing is that he would give them a chance, in my opinion, to have a player. He's not stylistically exactly like him, but somebody who could have the effect on an opponent in the way that George Kittle does. I just think he's that dynamic, and he has the kind of character that the Seahawks like. He is well liked by teams who have met him. So I think most people probably won't think he's a day one. I do, and I'm going with Elijah Arroyo.
We allow it on this show. We allow you to obey your own rules, and I think one of the interesting things about this draft, the tight end class, is fascinating, and you find some consensus, but you also find there's people that are like Elijah Arroyo is a good blocker. Elijah Arroyo is a terrible blocker. You have Mason Taylor is the best tight end in this class, and other people are like, no, the guy's like a mess when he's blocking. Anyway, I find the tight end evaluations going on in this class to be really fascinating, and Arroyo is certainly on a lot of people's lists. Griff, who is your second name?
So my second name is Marcus Embo. I think he's a first-round talent. I think he probably goes in the second round. Right tackle for Purdue, I would move him to guard, probably left guard. I think he has of all the offensive linemen, I think he's the best pure mover in the whole class. I think he's up there with the elite tackles in terms of movement, and maybe even a hair above them. What he doesn't have that they have, he doesn't have the weight or length that those guys have. So that's kind of why those guys are top 15, top 20 picks. I assume that the tackles, like the premier tackles, won't be there at 18. So then you're left with guys like Donovan Jackson, Savanea, Bratledge, Zabel. Of those guys, I think I like Embo the most, followed by Zabel. So that's where I'm going with Embo. Embo's ability to get out of his stance, get his front foot up and down is top notch. His lateral ability to cover ground, his play strength when moving is really impressive. He's an elite zone blocker. He's, I think, in pass protection, incredibly intuitive. His ability to reshape and contort his body in response to second efforts from pass rushers is, I mean, it's impressive at right tackle. And frankly, he could play right tackle in the NFL. I just don't think teams are going to want that ideally from him. So I think he projects as an elite guard. He's an easy scheme fit. He reminds me of Cesar Ruiz. Maybe if you gave Cesar Ruiz performance enhancing drugs of some kind, that's kind of what Marcus Embo looks like to me. I think he'd thrive in protection. He would. I can't think of a better guard prospect for them. I feel like he goes in the 40s. So I don't know how they're going to handle that. If they're interested in trading up, or do they trade down and surprise us out of 18? I'm not sure. But for me, I mean, I would take him in the mid late 20s. So if they want to trade down into the 20s and he's there, I would take him. So
yeah, Marcus Bowe's a really interesting prospect, and he's very unconventional. The way he gets the job done is unconventional. Seems like an excellent athlete, and the way he gets blocks done just aren't always. It reminds me a little bit of Zach Tom. I don't know if that's a fair comp at all, but like,
I see that.
a little bit of that where, he doesn't fit the mold, but I won't be surprised if in a couple of years everyone's like, man, that guy was a lot better than we gave him credit for. And so, yeah, totally fair to name him. And people I see in chat kind of already getting the misunderstanding. This does not mean Griff is saying you should take him at 18. This is simply guys that you think might go on day one, that, at least in this first round, that you think could be game changers. So Griff's got him as probably going in the 40s, but maybe going as early as the late 20s. So he's calling him a day one. That's totally fine. This is not saying that they should take him at 18 necessarily. Okay, so Elijah Arroyo from Rob, Marcus Bowe from Griff, and then me. There's a name that I think people that watch the show would assume I'm going to say. I intentionally, none of my five, I'm going to reel this right now, none of my five are offensive linemen. Right. And I did that in part because I figured you guys would name some of them, and in part because I'm not sure the ceiling on some of these guys. And so, like, if I'm really looking, I was looking at who do I think has some of the highest ceilings and the potential to be blue chip players. And realistically, it's blue chip players that change the fortunes of your team. It wasn't the offensive linemen necessarily that were doing it. Like, if it's not Armand Membu or Will Campbell or, like, I just kind of like wasn't quite there. So my name is one that I know Rob won't be a fan of, but I'm a big fan of. And this is another person that, I had some experience with at the combine, and I left with the impression that this guy has the quiet confidence and the supreme ability that goes along with players that end up being elite. And there was no question in his mind how good he was. There was just about showing it. And it's Nick Emenwari. So second safety that we've listed, Rob listed Malachi Starks, who I think is a more accomplished safety for sure. But I love the way Emenwari plays in zone. I think he's got elite zone instincts, and I think those are often undersold for playmakers, especially at the safety position. A lot of Emenwari's picks are him undercutting passes with his zone drops because he gets places that quarterbacks don't expect him to be able to get. He's absolutely one of the elite athletes in this class. Was also a first-team All-American, so he's also can play. And was coached by the same coach as Cam Chancellor, and that coach has compared the two. I don't think that's a crazy comparison, but I think that's a pretty big stretch for him to get to that point. So that is my second name, is Nick Emenwari, as a day one. That is my only two day one guys. Anyone else have another day one before we move to day two?
I have one more day one.
All right. Rob, give me your last day one game changer.
Well, this isn't someone I would have expected to put on this list 2 weeks ago. But I've learned quite a lot about him in the last few days. And people who follow the blog will probably know what I'm going to say. And that is Emeka Egbuka. I'm led to believe he was the guy at Ohio State. That he was... Think of all the players on that team. You're talking about Jeremiah Smith. You're talking about Will Howard. You're talking about those two pass rushers. Tate Williams, Donovan Jackson, the left tackle. The linebacker's good. The safety's good. You've got another safety who's going to be top 10 pick in the future. They have all those players. And the belief is that Egbuka was the guy, that they wouldn't win a national championship without him. He was the player that everybody went to. He was the one who set the tone. He's physically was way more impressive than I think a lot of people expected when he did his testing. One person told me the last 10 days ago that he wins every single 1v1 basketball game that they played at Ohio State. And the name that was mentioned to me was Amon-Ra St. Brown. And, when you actually look at it, and I try when people say these things not to go back and automatically assume they're right. And I probably undersold the player and look for things. But when I went back and watched him, I could understand what this person was saying. And if you put Amon-Ra St. Brown on this roster, I think you're a better football team. So I know that he has kind of lived in the shadow of some exceptional receivers that Ohio State have had. I think he is a great scheme fit, and I think he's probably going to be better than I initially thought. I think he's a realistic option at 18, and I wanted to put him on this list.
Love it. Love it. It's good because you pick a guy that I'd be not a fan of, and I picked a guy that I know you wouldn't be a fan of. That's why we do this.
Just, I like Nick Anwanwori. I'm not that excited about him at 18, but I like him. I've given him a fringe first round grade. So,
well, and in kind, I think Egbuka is going to be a great receiver. I don't know if I love him for the Seahawks. It feels a little bit duplicative of Mr. JSN, but if we could have two JSNs, that's not the worst thing in the world. I think we could do a lot worse than that. So, fun and interesting. No. One offensive lineman out of that group of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 names that we've listed already. Interesting. And that one guy was also a guy that Griff's not even convinced is a first round pick. So interesting so far. Let's get into day 2. And Griff, I'm going to start with you on this one. Who is your first day 2 pick?
Safety, Andrew Makuba. I think he's the most well-rounded athlete of the safeties in this class, like overall, including movement skills and agility. Explosive range. He can play really all the spots, to the field, to the boundary. His quarters technique is really good. He can play a center field. He can play in the slot. He's incredibly confident coming downhill and making tackles in the alley. That translates to in the box. Like he has linebacker fundamentals in the box, even though he doesn't have the size for it. He can still, if you can keep him clean, he can still survive in there. He's played in the slot, so he can play an inside leverage nickel where you're going to get formation into the run fit frequently. So he can intermix with Devin Witherspoon a little bit too. So that Witherspoon is only in the slot when you want him there. Just the range and the playmaking ability, the stuff he can do in the flat, it's really impressive. And just looking at their defense, there were only so many areas left to go to try to improve spots. And I like Kobe Bryant, but at safety, there are 3 safeties that are going to be playing considerable snaps, and that's the one area, the interior of the back 7. Like I'm not really partial if it's linebacker or safety, but they just need one of those spots to improve. And so it's really just who's your favorite player in that equation. I see Makuba being one of those. Safety is one. Well, one of the areas that the defense was weak, even at post Ernest Jones trade, is that they're still really struggling against play action. And so play action is often, this is a little oversimplistic, but play action is often just a function of how good is your linebacker and safety group. So improving that, one of those categories can help boost that area of their defense. And I think Makuba can be, I think I almost like him as much as Starks. So kind of becomes a value thing. But I just think he's an incredibly rangy, explosive, confident athlete. And I think also that he and Devin would play into each other and play off one another. So
can absolutely imagine those two guys playing together. That'd be a lot of fun. And interesting, we've got 3 safeties out of the names so far. That's kind of fascinating. It's not a part of this draft that gets discussed as much, as a strength of the draft. But there's some pretty interesting names on the safety side of this class. All right, I think I'm up next, and I've got 2 day 2 guys. One that's kind of a borderline. But my next name is Jack Besh, wide receiver, TCU. And one of the things I really like about Besh is a guy that normally I wouldn't be in on, because I think he's somewhat limited as an athlete, and I think but he's got something that I think will just end up winning out time and time again. A little bit like Puka Nacua. I'm not saying he is Puka Nacua, but just not necessarily most elite athlete, but incredibly physical, great at the point of the catch. He turns passes that maybe shouldn't be complete into completions. I think he wills completions to happen. I think he runs really good routes, and I think he's one of the best blockers in this class. He's also one of the best people in this class. I think him in that room would fit in perfectly, and I think that he would absolutely be a guy that could grow into a different type of X. I don't think he's not a deep speed guy, but he's a deep guy in terms of high pointing the ball and making contested catches. So I think he'd be a great fit in this offense. He's just one of these guys I can't quit. I keep looking at, I'll name another guy that there's 2 other guys I thought about. Jalen Noel, Jaden Higgins are guys I think about a lot. Ultimately, there's something about Besh that just feels like he's going to be a special and different kind of player in this class. So I went there, even though in all my mocks, I rarely end up picking him. He's usually not available or whatever. But Jack Besh is my next player as a day 2 name. All right. Let's get back to you, Rob. Day 2, who you got?
Well, this player, I don't think the Seahawks are going to draft. But I think he is somebody who could elevate a team. The character issues are legit. Some people love him. Some people hate him. He is inconsistent, but his flashes are outstanding. And that is Walter Nolan of Ole Miss. When he is on it, he can be unstoppable. There were a couple of games last year where Walter Nolan's made another play. Walter Nolan's made another play. And typically when you notice defensive tackles doing that, it makes you kind of sit up and take notice. They're not typically players who wreck games. So the natural talent is clear and obvious. He is very athletic. He's got a weird combination of great length and sort of athletic frame. The problem is the application and the mentality is not there. The professional approach that you need to be elite is lacking with him. But if someone could tap into him and could get him on track, he could be one of the best pass rushing defensive tackles in the league. And those players are rare. So I'm naming him not necessarily as somebody the Seahawks will draft, but somebody who will probably go in round 2 because of the character concerns. And we may look back and a team that can kind of handle those character concerns and are willing to take the chance. We might end up looking at one of the better players in this draft class who goes 40th overall because of those character concerns.
Mm-hmm. Interesting name there. And I want to clarify because I'm seeing people confused in chat. Day 1 is the first round. Day 2 can be 2nd or 3rd round. Day 3 is 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th round. So we're on day 2. This could be the guys we're naming are 2nd or 3rd rounders at this point. Okay. Okay. Griff, who is your next name?
I'm debating which one to list off, but I'm just going to lean into it just because linebacker's one of my favorite positions. So Carson Schwessinger, UCLA. He's my I have him stacked so far. I've only watched like 7 backers, but he's my second ranked linebacker. First is Jahad Campbell. I really like Carson Schwessinger. I think he has the best pure coverage skills and tape in the draft of linebackers. Just unreal range, just one pure range. So like my checklist is, can you carry routes? And in the college game especially, you're seeing it less and less where they even ask guys to carry routes. For me, my kind of litmus test is, what are they asking you to do first and foremost? And that's indicative of what the coaching staff thinks a player can do. Not always, but it's a pretty reliable guide. So in UCLA's defense, I mean, they have him the pull runner in Tampa too, so he's flying downfield. It's not just tight ends; it's slot receivers as well. Cover 3, he's the weak hook. He's got to take the third innermost slot receiver all the way downfield and anywhere. So classic Bobby Wagner stuff. He can do it. So his ability to cover distance is incredible, but then also his ability to throttle down and change direction, redirect, and move off of one route, get to the next route is impeccable. But all of that's moot if you don't know what you're doing out in the field as well. So he knows where the threats are. He's just a very smart player. His zone drops, as soon as one route has eliminated itself in terms of being a threat relating to the next route, he knows right where it is, and he squeezes that window really aggressively. So just an incredible mover in space. I would say just pure range, he's even more impressive than Jahad Campbell. As a run defender, he keys quickly, he moves, scrapes around in the box laterally, diagnoses pretty quick. His one weakness is, and I think it's a little overstated, but his weakness is with contact. I don't think he's terrible against contact. He's a finesse player. Kind of like Campbell's more of a finesse player than talked about as well. He's not going to stack and shed a 300-pound guy. And I think you can put together a cut up of even some of the best linebackers all time of getting swallowed up by a guard coming right downhill on him. It's just going to happen. It's just how frequently does it happen. I don't think it happens at a rate for Carson that is a higher rate than some of the best linebackers in the NFL right now that we consider. So Schwessinger would go a long way in absolutely exploding the ceiling of the defense in defending play action. And if they improve that, again, they improve that category, their first down pass defense, then they're going to be a top 5 defense. So Carson Schwessinger would be in the name of, if you want to see that effort go from, if you want to see the defense go from a fringe or like around the 10th ranked defense to be in the conversation, to be top 5, Schwessinger is one of the picks that I would think that can get you there. That's not to say I don't dislike Tyrese Knight at this point. I want to see how he can develop, but I don't think Knight should stop you from drafting someone like Schwessinger, provided that you value him like I do. Not everyone sees him the same way, but I just think his coverage skills are just elite. And it's so hard to find that of linebackers coming out right now, because just the college game is just, it's changing so much. There's so few linebackers are asked to do what and if the NFL asks linebackers to do in coverage, but he's kind of a throwback to the early 2010s. So I think he'd be a big get for them.
Yeah, it's interesting you name a linebacker. I looked at there's linebackers I really like in this class, and ultimately I left linebackers off my list because I wasn't convinced that there was a guy that was going to take the Seahawks that much further, like from Ernest Jones and Tyrese Knight. But there's definitely guys that could improve it, and so it's interesting, knowing the way you study how these guys play and what they can bring to a defense, that he's on your list. I think that's pretty cool. So, my next name, my last day 2 name, is a guy I also saw at Mobile, and one of the things that stood out to me about him was, before he even was actually doing any of the drills or doing team drills or playing in the game, just watching him warm up, and he was this just little ball of explosion. Like, he was compact, and when he got out of his stance, he just rocketed. And I had marked him down because I wanted to see this guy anyway, so that's why I was watching him. And then I watched him in 1v1s, and I watched him during team drills, and then I looked back at his stats, and this guy has the number 1 pass rush win rate of any interior defensive lineman in college football. Only thing that I think really holds him back is he's a little bit like, he's not long, and he didn't play a ton of snaps. You can decide that's a good thing or a bad thing, but his name's Omar Norman Lott, and I think he has a chance to be one of the most impactful interior linemen in this class. I think that it wouldn't shock me if someone liked him enough that he sneaks into the first round. I don't think that's going to happen because of his size. But you would look at him and you wouldn't think he was over 300 pounds, but he is. And he moves with like the explosiveness of a guy that's like 270, 280. So I think he wins with pad level, he wins with leverage, and he is lightning quick. So I think this guy is going to be a cannonball in the middle of somebody's defensive line. And I think if you could add someone who's that disruptive next to the guys they've already got there, anything that's going to add to the pass rush, I just think is something that can take your team to the next level. So he is my next and last day 2 pick. All right, so I've named 4 guys. Rob has named 4 guys. Griff has named 4 guys. We're on to our 5th and maybe final. We'll probably have some bonus names, but Rob, give me your final official, and this is a day 3 guy. It's got to be a day 3 guy.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to put a cat amongst the pigeons, as we say over here.
Yeah.
By picking a quarterback. And I am picking somebody who is not physically outstanding, will not be a scrambling dynamo who chucks it downfield from improv or anything like that. It's Curtis Rourke from Indiana. I think you see enough throws to the sideline on a mid and deep range to be quite intrigued. I liked the way he threw over the middle. He had more big-time throws than Jalen Milroe last season. It's definitely a thing that when he played the tougher teams at the end of the season, he didn't quite have that bit of magic in him to elevate a completely overmatched team to a huge upset. Ohio State was difficult to watch, and so was the Notre Dame game in the playoffs. But he had no supporting cast whatsoever. His offensive line stinks, and it really stinks. You know, not in a way that everyone talks about Colorado's, and it really stinks. And this is what I find quite interesting. So not only the more big-time throws than Jalen Milroe with all of his perks of playing for Alabama, Rourke was responsible for only 1 sack all year as an individual. That was the lowest amongst all of the draftable QBs. He only created 6 pressures himself. Again, the lowest. His 9.1% dropbacks with some responsibilities for pressure. Again, the lowest. And that's despite having the second worst time to throw. So the guy gets the ball out quickly. He can function in a non-ideal situation, throwing to non-elite receivers. His QBR was 3rd behind Cam Ward, who was top, who's going to be the first overall pick, and Dylan Gabriel. I like his fit in this scheme. I think he does need to go somewhere where the scheme can hold his hand a little bit. I don't know whether he's a John QB, but I think he might be a Shanahan QB. And I think he's worth a shot. You know, and when you're talking about day 3 players who can make a team great, you've kind of got to dig around for a player who can do that. And I think a quarterback who could be a plus system quarterback is the kind of player who can help your team elevate if you find a diamond on day 3. So I have gone for Curtis Rourke.
Love it. First quarterback, and that from a positional value perspective, if we're being honest, there's no player, no position that could help your team go from good to great more than that. Griff, who is your 5th and final and your first day 3? This is rounds 4, 5, 6, and 7 for those listening along.
All right. Well, I don't know if he's going in the 3rd or 4th round or not. So it's hard for me to answer this. I've only got one guy of my list that I am very confident will be there on day 3. So I was going to say Jackson Slater, guard, Sacramento State, but I don't know if I feel like he could be a 3rd.
I think that's a decent day 3 bet.
Think so? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, in that case, all right, spoiler. So if I wasn't going to go Slater, it was going to be Jordan Turner, Michigan State inside linebacker. But back to Slater, the guard. I think he's a scheme fit. I think he's really explosive. His blocks well in zone, can reach guys, get across their face, can get to the second level really comfortable, takes good angles. Pass protection is really strong. He can handle counter moves well. Doesn't give up the corner super easily. Can handle a bull rush. I think he's kind of one of those sleeper guys that is, third round talent, and that might be their fourth round. So I think he's a starting caliber guard and could be part of the effort of improving the O-line. So, yeah, sorry about that. It's my dog.
It's okay.
Can I just say, there is nothing more exciting than when a dog accidentally gets involved on a stream. I just love it every single time.
Yeah. I'm surprised he's not barking yet. He'll start crying at me here in a second. But so Jackson Slater.
Love that. And I think absolutely qualifies as a day 3 possibility. My fifth and final name, day 3. And again, no offensive lineman. I went with a guy that I initially, there's a guy that got my attention at the Senior Bowl. I was like, who is that? Like, he is built differently. Why is he playing in that position? And I went and dug in. I started watching him. I was interested. And then I went to the combine, talked to him a little bit, and watched him go through drills. And I was like, I think this guy's just an athlete and an interesting looking player, but I don't think he's going to be the guy. While I was watching him, there was another guy I met at the combine and then watched him go through drills. And I was like, this guy I actually do think could be something. They both play cornerback. The first guy's name was Darian Porter, and I don't think he's going to be what people think he is. I don't think he's going to work out as an NFL corner. The guy that I picked instead, Zoff Frazier, who, while everyone was oohing and eyeing over Darian Porter running a 4.3 40, Zoff Frazier at 6'3", 186 pounds, ran a 4.36. And when he went through drills and you watch him move, he is so much more fluid and decisive in his movements. And I saw cornerback body, and I think that's a guy that can also support in the run as well. And so Zoff Frazier's a guy that, from a positional value perspective, I feel like the Seahawks are okay at corner. I think if they could upgrade Josh Jobe, and or if they could find somebody that they feel good about moving on from Reek Woolen, if they feel like, for whatever reason, that's something they want to do, I think that's a pretty big get. And I think Frazier's one of my best bets of a guy that could fill that role. So day 3 in terms of day 3 guys. So Zoff Frazier's my fifth guy. So, all right, we've done 5 each. I'm going to rename each of them. I'll go through Rob's first, Griff's, and then mine. And then we're going to go through a little bit of bonus. All right. So Rob's, Malachi Starks, the safety, Elijah Arroyo, the tight end, Emeka Egbuka, the wide receiver, Walter Nolan, the defensive lineman, defensive tackle, and Curtis Rourke, the quarterback. Griff, Colston Loveland, the tight end, Marcus Bowe, the guard/tackle, maybe center, Andrew Makuba, the safety, Carson Schlesinger, the linebacker, and Jackson Slater, the guard. My name's Shamar Stewart, Nick Manwari, Jack Besh, the wide receiver, Zoff Frazier, the corner, and Omar Norman Lott, the defensive tackle. So we didn't have, I don't know if, did we hit any names that you took off your list, Rob? Was there any overlap?
No, none.
Interesting. I love that. All right. So we're not going to go through in depth here, but who are the guys that like were, if you were to name, first of all, we're going to do one more. If you can have one more name, who would it be? And then we're going to go through some other names that came on your list that we didn't get to. Griff, who is, okay, Rob, go ahead. Yeah. Go ahead, Rob.
Hey, Charles Grant. I think there is a reason why his zone blocking grade is so good. Flies to the second level, lands on his targets with great accuracy. There's a lot of players who can get to the second level, and then they kind of just sort of, this is the one thing I think when you're watching zone blocking, you kind of think, oh, he's great. He can get out there. They don't do anything when he gets to the second level. They kind of like, they don't block anybody, but he does. He does land with a high degree of accuracy. Good combo blocker. That's really important. If you're going to run this system, lateral quickness is first rate. He's obviously very athletic. I think his pass pro tape. I mean, you have to remember he's playing for William and Mary, so he's not exactly taking on Braden Swinson or Abdul Carter, but his pass pro tape against the competition he faced was good. I love the I want to see violence. I'd like to see a little bit more from him at the line, but when he gets to the second level, he finishes with violence and aggression, which is what you want from this scheme. He can control blocks when he clamps on initial contact. Just a bit more aggression and finishing that sort of initial clamping would be good. Said to be intelligent and well liked, and I could see him starting at a left tackle in the NFL. Yeah. So I think he could be a left tackle, and I think he could be a great left guard as well. So he's somebody 50 to 75 for me is his kind of range. So I don't think the Seahawks could get him in round 3, but they could get him in round 2, or maybe they work a situation where they trade up or down from one of their spots and he ends up being the best player available. But he's just somebody whose ceiling is high quality offensive lineman, potentially at tackle. And for that reason, again, it's that sort of positional elevating a team. I think you could do it. And it's such a good zone blocking fit that if you plugged him in even at left guard, I think he could be really good for the Seahawks.
He's a great one. Griff, your bonus. You can either go with Jordan Turner, or if you wanted to go somewhere else, you can.
Well, I'll cheat and not name Turner because I already named him.
Okay.
Named him without naming him. Xavier Watts, safety, Notre Dame. I think he's got the highest football IQ of all the safeties in the draft. I don't think he's the best prospect overall. He's incredibly smart. His anticipation is nuts. His ability to relate to routes while keeping eyes on the quarterback is like Quandre Diggs level type stuff. His functional range is so much better than his testing because he's so smart. Like he's like the way I describe it, like he's reverse engineering the quarterback's progression from the safety spot. Obviously the ball production is there. He's really comfortable coming downhill, takes good angles. If you were to just draw a line on the field of the pass that he takes, it would all be straight lines, and he'd be like the diagonal lines would be the most efficient angle to intersect with either the route or the ball carrier. I just think he's a phenomenal football player. And every year there's a safety taken that doesn't test well that ends up being a Pro Bowler or an All-Pro. Or if you look at the Pro Bowler safeties and how many of them are elite athletes, there's a lot of them that are just the 6 foot, 200 pound, 4'6" something guys that just are really good safeties because they know how to play football. And I just think he's kind of one of those classic safeties with that kind of profile overall. So I think he's a second round player, but I could totally see his testing dropping into the third round. And if he's there, I think that'd be a slam dunk. And yet again, another pick in service of improving the Seahawks' early down weaknesses. He'd still add to the chorus on third down, but he would he'd really fit. Also the personality as well, similar to Makuba. The on-field energy he brings, tenacity, kind of setting the standard. You know, it's watching Notre Dame, like he gets them pumped up. People want to play catch up with him. So to catch up to him on the field with the energy level he brings. So I think he'd be a really good player for them as well.
This was a hard one. I ended up going with a name that's going to make some people thrilled and some people furious, and is a name that I've been incredibly critical of. And speaking of Mobile, I left there like completely out on this guy. But if the question is who can take you from good to great, you got to pick a quarterback, and you got to pick somebody who has the potential to really elevate your team. The only guy that I can really look at and say, if he works out, would do that is Jalen Milroe. I think he's got a very small chance of actually delivering on that promise. I think he's a massive project as a passer. I think he's an even bigger project as an under center play action passer. I was like, it was atrocious watching him try to take snaps and like process. Like it was about as bad of a set of practices as I've ever seen a quarterback have. With all that said, if somebody can figure that out, I wouldn't want it day one. I wouldn't want it day two. If somehow he was a day 3 guy and he works out, he's got a top 5 tool in his toolbox, like top 5 player overall. Like his legs are that good if you can figure out how to make him a passer, an effective passer. So I think it's probably less than a 10% chance that he ends up becoming that player, maybe less than a 5% chance. But when I looked at the different names that were coming to mind, I was like, I got to put him on there. That's the name. So surprised myself, but that's how I got there. So hopefully I gave everybody a little bit of whether you like him or hate him, you got a little bit of something in there. I want to share like a couple other names that for me came on. I'm not going to go long here, and then I want to give you guys the same chance. So other guys that I had on my list that didn't make it. Donovan Jackson, like really love that guy as a lineman. I can't quite tell if he's a day one or day two, and I also thought one of you guys would name him, so I left him off the list. Jackson Dart and Tyler Shuck because they're quarterbacks, but I can't get there with them. I'm not sure. I think that they're really true franchise guys. JJ Pegues, I think as a guy that could be a meaningful defensive tackle and also a fullback, if he works out, could be really interesting. Cam Scattaboo, similarly, if he ends up being a fullback like hybrid for them, or I think there could be something really interesting there, but didn't quite come to the top. And then Mason Taylor was another name that for me I'm really intrigued by, but couldn't quite get to my top 5. So those are a couple names that I was in consideration of but didn't make it. Rob, who else is on your list?
Well, the two main ones were Chase Lunt. I think he's a day 3 guy. He's a perfect zone blocker, flies to the second level, gets his head down, gets off the ball, sprints, finds someone to hammer, consistently finishes his blocks. Tape reminded me a lot of Will Fry's, actually. Don't really understand why he's not being talked about more. Even his average snaps were not a problem. You do tend to watch, you can watch sort of very good plays from a lineman and then, oh my word, that's terrible. That's why he's a 4th rounder. I didn't really see that. I just saw, competency and then flashes of quality. And I don't know if it's how he looks, frame, lack of length. In fact, he plays for UConn, right tackle. I don't know what it is, but I think he is right there with Gray Zabel and Charles Grant as very, very attractive zone blocking options. And he plays like an absolute bastard. So that's, what I want. And I think he is somebody who, I know he's having an official visit. I just think, if you can't get to some of these guys, I think he's a potential starter at the next level. So he's one. Braden Swinson, I really like. I think he's got legit speed off the edge. Not a great bend and straighten class, but he can do it. Some jolt in his hands, and he can displace a lineman on initial contact. I think hand use is so critical. It's kind of like the forgotten art of pass rushing, is that you are not going to be able to just rush around a tackle at the NFL. You're going to have to engage. You're going to have to disengage. You've got to have that speed and power. So he has that. He has got counters. 66 pressures in the regular season in college football was the most, with Donovan Ezeuruku in the regular season, not including the playoffs. Abdul Carter and Jack Sawyer got above them because of the playoffs. And I just think he's got a bit of star quality in his personality. So I think he's an ascending player. So I think Braden Swinson. And then, you mentioned Jack. I really like Jack Besh. I really like Gray Zabel. I really like Tyler Booker. I don't think he's going to change a team, though. I think he's just going to be a solid player. Tate Ratledge looks to me like an Eagles lineman. So I guess everybody should try and draft those guys. And then, the more I've watched of Savon Ravel, I do like him. I like him, and I like his physicality. And I don't know if you've either interviewed him, Brian, at the Combine or listened to any of his interviews. The guy speaks like a coach. He's so technical in the way he describes everything, and he swears during his interviews, which I always think is like a sign of like sneaky aggression, that like he's kind of ready to play even in an interview setting. So I kind of like that guy. I like the fact they're getting him in. I'm warming to the idea of him in round 2 if they can get him. So they're the guys.
He's a fascinating guy. A little bit of Reek Woolen-esque, late to the position in some ways. Don't have a lot of tape on him, but what there is excellent. And
just maybe a little bit more, let's say, application than Reek sometimes.
yeah, maybe.
I don't think Jordan Love will have to run up to him and go, "What are you doing?"
Yeah, exactly. Griff, any other names that you're considering?
Yeah, if you're gonna if I'm gonna take a flyer on a quarterback round, like on day 3, I'd probably go for Kyle McCord.
Mhm.
After Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders, I think he's probably the best quarterback at playing quarterback. That doesn't mean he's the best prospect. It will be the 3rd best NFL quarterback. He may not even be a starter in the league, but the things under his control, his vision, processing, how on time he is, he's really clean. I mean, he knows what he's doing. Syracuse runs a lot of plays in the drop back game that Kubiak and Shanahan McVay all run. So he's very caught up in that regard. So it's kind of easy to get a feel for what he's capable of. I think the arm talent is mildly below average. I think it's okay. I think the one thing he has going for him is he can throw different types of balls. He can get the ball up and down and stuff. I really am not a fan of his throwing motion. That said, that kind of irks me. But decision making is there. You want to put him on the bench for a little bit and just see what's there. I don't see the harm in that type of thing. I don't think San Francisco, when they took Brock Purdy, thought he was going to turn into anything until training camp. Obviously, he impressed. But like Purdy doesn't have that great of an arm. He really doesn't. So, but he can still play a decent level of football. I don't know. I would be intrigued by McCord. I think the other thing about McCord is he is accurate. I will say that he is accurate. So accuracy with processing, I mean, what does that add up to? I don't know. It depends. But he's a player that I would be, no matter where he goes, I'll be very curious to watch his tape in the preseason. Now that preseason tape circulates, because that will kind of tell you, like, all right, can his arm work on an NFL field or not? Because I do think he has some actual quarterbacking in him that a lot of guys in this class just frankly don't. So,
Yeah, I when I first saw McCord play, and I can't remember which game it was, I honestly hadn't followed him before, and I was like, well, that's an NFL throw he just made. That's another like he layers throws and hits hole shots that a lot of the guys that we've talked about, I haven't seen really do those types of throws, at least at college. So I think he's certainly interesting. I have to admit, I was a little bit turned off by his presence at the combine. Not like he wasn't a bad dude. He just seemed goofy. And I was like, this, like he was like the opposite of Jackson Dart. Jackson Dart was just like this presence that all his teammates, everyone seemed to like to be drawn to, and McCord just kind of seemed a little bit goofy. But I like, as a quarterback, I was like very, very much impressed with what I saw from him. So I think that's a great call. All right, guys. Well, I think we have a couple super chats that we should probably get to as a group. Wow, that's a big one. Will Fries. Well, congratulations on your big deal, Will. He says, got to go offensive line and Gray's able.
He could have worked out a bigger super chat if he's earning a 5-year
exactly.
contract.
If you just got your money, you could give a little bit more than that, Will. But if Gray's able is available and we don't get him, that would be a huge mistake. If the leverage he gets for a 6'6" guy is unheard of and is what a team needs, a rare opportunity. Gray's able, like Rob, you mentioned him. It wasn't on our other lists. I agree. Like, I was shocked when I saw he was 6'6". The guy plays with like the leverage of a 6'3", 6'2" kind of guy. And I'd be fine with him at 18. But I'm not sure I see Gray Zabel taking us from good to great. I'm just not sure I see it.
Well, I didn't put any offensive linemen in my initial 5 for that reason. I don't think it's very hard. You think of the best interior offensive lineman in the NFL. I don't think it elevates you from good to great. I think it kind of cements things. It can be, it's great to have. Obviously, the Chiefs benefited it from having such a great interior offensive line with Tooney, Creed Humphrey, and then Smith. So it can be a big thing as a collective, but I don't think one interior offensive lineman is going to come in and necessarily send the Seahawks into greatness. Gray Zabel's a really good player. I think he's a top 20 pick. I think there's an increasing chance he won't be there at 18 because of when you have an explosive testing profile like Tristan Wirfs and the agility of Nate Solder, you're not typically going to last in a draft like this. And I think the Colts, the Dolphins, the Cardinals, the Bengals, that's sort of like a gauntlet to get through to get to 18 anyway. But I do know there are people who just don't think he's particularly special. Like I spoke to someone who just said, he ain't a first round pick.
Yeah.
And I think there may be a feeling that from some people would do it, and others think he's probably, I don't know, the 38th or the 42nd best player in the draft. And is that worth 18? I don't know.
I have a little bit of that concern myself. Hawks fan Matt Man has been a member for a year. I love that. Says, do you expect the Seahawks could find trouble finding a partner with whom they could trade back in the first round? I think they're going to have a real hard time. I mean, I asked John about this at the owners meeting. I'm like, have you realized have you found that teams are giving up less to move up in the first round, like 4th round picks? And he's like, yeah, it's a bummer. So I don't expect them to be able to trade back, especially in this draft class.
Completely agree.
Italian Knights.
Who's going to give up the meat of the draft is 2, 3, 4.
Yeah.
Who's doing that?
I think you could get a 4th round pick. I just don't know that it would make sense to move down from 18 to whatever it would be for a 4th round pick. I think you're better off just picking your guy.
And teams like the Giants have decided, by the looks of things, that they're. No one's suggesting that Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston are going to lead them to the promised land, but they seem to.
What are you talking about?
I know, but they seem to have prepared themselves not to take a quarterback because I heard this point mentioned earlier. They are not the 2 players necessarily that you want to put a rookie quarterback next to.
I don't know, man. I'll say this: Joe Shane and Brian Dable weren't exactly like hanging out with the rest of the coaches and GMs. I think they're kind of quarantined, on soon to be not their island. So who knows what they're going to do? Interesting group. Italian Knights gifted 50 Hawk Blogger memberships. Thank you so much, Italian Knight. Really appreciate this. If you want to get one of these free memberships, just search Google to figure out how to turn on gifting for your YouTube account. And then all you got to do is like, subscribe, watch the show, and YouTube will gift you one of these free memberships. Dogzilla Monster, last one here, says, any chance Sam Howell starts in game 1? I say no, not unless there's an injury.
Has something happened to Sam Darnold in the last 24 hours that I'm not aware of? Why would Sam... I mean, is he going to be on the roster?
I think there's a chance he won't.
The thing is, you mentioned Jalen Milroe. I don't know if you guys have seen this interesting thing that he's accepted an invite to the combine.
He did.
And there's very few quarterbacks who... No, sorry, let me say that again.
Very few players that are invited.
Players
that
go and don't go in at least the second round. So that would suggest, and this is something I've been talking about this week, there may well be a sort of run on quarterbacks between picks, say, 30 and 45. And he may be one of the ones who go early for the exact reason that you've said there, Brian, that you draft him with the objective of trying to turn him into some kind of poor man's Lamar Jackson. And I don't think it's a wise plan, but I don't think it's beyond the realms of possibility that somebody said to me that Will Howard's going to go in that range and may even sort of a team might go and just get him because they want him. And whether that's Raiders, Jets, somebody like that, I could see that. So then you've got Milroe, potentially Howard. I still think there's half a chance that Quinn Ewers might end up going in that range. Shook. It could end up being pretty wild in that sort of area there where you all of a sudden see a bunch of second-tier quarterbacks coming off the board. Maybe that's when the run will be.
I feel like this draft is full of like Case Keenums and Colt McCoys and like like a lot of guys that their real top level is going to be a career backup. And the guys that become starters, maybe they become, who's the WSU guy that I love with the mustache?
Minshew.
Mark Gardner Minshew. Like Minshew's won some games. He's had some good, he's started a fair number of games, but he's not ever going to be your franchise guy. So, guys, I want to let you go, especially, sick Rob and sick in the head, Griff, if not in the body. Any last thoughts before I say goodbye? And Rob, anything coming up for you? And then I'll ask you the same thing, Griff, on CX Draft Blog.
Don't think I've got anything particularly planned, although obviously I will be probably writing every day because it's that time of year. So all I will say is it was great to meet Griff's dog. Mine aren't allowed in because they would they'd be a pain in the arse. So, but it was great to meet Griff's dog.
Well, if I
Griff,
didn't, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, if I didn't let mine in, you'd hear them crying and scratching at the door because they just want to be as annoying as possible whenever they have the opportunity. Maddie and I will ostensibly, we're going to be doing next Saturday. We're going to try to do 2 positions every Saturday up until the draft. So I think we're doing linebacker and tight end. Going to try to look at 5 tight ends and then kind of just rattle off our thoughts on 7 to 10 linebackers or so. And then the following week we'll do probably guard and safety or something like that.
Is linebacker your favorite position? Admit it's your favorite position.
Honestly, edge rusher is my favorite. But we're kind of stacked at edge rush right now. So linebacker's definitely second. Definitely second.
I feel like I've seen more of your takes relative to linebacker than other.
Well, we've had a linebacker situation in Seattle the past handful of years, so it's kind of merited watching more. But yeah, no.
What's your favorite position, Brian?
My favorite position, man. I don't think I've ever thought about that. I think my favorite position is defensive tackle. Yeah, like a great defensive tackle is probably my favorite position. How about you, Rob?
Offensive line. I just enjoy watching
offensive line.
Yeah, I enjoy watching offensive line the most.
I'm so sorry. That is such a harsh reality that you've had to deal with.
I enjoy
being a Seahawks fan who loves offensive line play.
I just think it's the most fun tape to watch. You know, I think it's quite difficult actually. You know, especially if you get hold of an all 22. I think it can be quite hard work to do positions that are not at the line. And I think actually watching the linemen, it can be quite easy, and you can typically find who's good or not in a very short space of time. I enjoy doing that line. Yeah.
I think that's true. And there's like a few positions that I like because they are the easiest to get a quick impression of if you watch in practice. And it's offensive and defensive linemen, because 1v1 drills tell you a lot. They don't tell you run blocking or run defending, but they tell you a lot about the players pretty quickly. And then cornerbacks and receivers. Cornerbacks, like you can tell pretty quickly how those guys are going to hold up and what receivers are going to, play well. I think linebackers are much harder. All right. With that, I want to let you guys go. Thank you so much for coming on. We'll have you on again as often as we can make this work. Seahawks Draft Roundtable in the books for the first time in 2025. Thank you both.
Anytime.
Thanks, guys. Take care.
All right. That was Griff Sturgeon and Rob Staton. Great stuff from those guys. Hopefully you enjoyed that. I know I always do. While we were talking there, Dave Esp has gifted 10 more Hawkblogger memberships. That's 60 free Hawkblogger memberships floating out there in the ether. All you got to do is turn on gifting on your YouTube account and then subscribe, watch the show, and you could be one of the people that gets those. And if you get one of them, consider giving one, pay it forward to somebody else. Also a good idea, upgrade to a club level or higher membership. That gets you access to the Discord channel where you can talk with other Seahawks fans all the time, in between shows, during shows. And also it joins you with the Patreon community. So patreon.com/Hawkblogger. That is where you get all the ad-free audio of this show each and every day. And you get access to the Discord channel. And you get to ask Patreon questions every week for Real Hawk Talk. So join at patreon.com/Hawkblogger, upgrade to a club level membership on YouTube, do it all. It's all great. And you can be part of what is, I think, a really growing and fun community. We're charging up towards 18,000 subscribers. Would love to get there as soon as possible. So make sure you give the channel a subscribe. And my real request right now, if you're listening on an audio podcast, whatever platform you're on, take a moment, give the show a 5-star rating. That would really help as we're trying to grow the audio pod of this show. And specifically Apple Podcast is a little bit lower than it should be. I think it's like 4.3. Let's get that up to, Spotify's up at 4.8. That's where we should be, 4.8, 4.9. So let's get as many 5.0 pods ratings as possible. I would really appreciate it. All right, folks, that is it for this later than usual edition of HB Mornings and the Seahawks Draft Roundtable. I'll be back with you first thing tomorrow morning, and we'll keep this thing rolling. Until then, have a great rest of your day.